All right, welcome, listeners. Welcome to episode 144 of the Unsecurity podcast. The date is August 24th, 2021. And joining me, as usual, is my awesome friend, Brad Nye. Hi, Brad.
Hey, Evan.
What's
what's
new?
I was gonna say I like the background behind you.
Yeah, it doesn't suck. I'm down here in Mexico again. Marlis came down here to do work on the house to get it ready for rental. And she was going to come by herself. And I didn't feel comfortable about that at the beginning. And then I was like, I didn't make the decision until like 2 days before she was leaving that I'm going to go with, because I found tickets for $250 round trip.
Yeah, it's better there than here. We've had like pretty bad thunderstorms for the last 5 or 6 hours now. So that's been fun.
Well, it's rainy season here, so it rained almost all day yesterday. But I told Marlis that I'm coming down for like support, and I'm going to work. So I have zero. Being it's just me and her, I don't have any distractions. So no dogs, no cat, or I don't have cats anyway. No kids.
And I mean, the kind of a nice segue, but it's good for you to get away, even if you're still working, just to change up that environment.
Well, right, and that is a good segue, man, because you're going on PTO tomorrow.
Yes.
Much needed, much deserved.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times my PTO is, like you said, it's working in different locations. It almost doesn't even feel like I'm working because the scenery is different.
Right. Yeah. And tomorrow it will be the first time I'm leaving the house since like more than like 2 nights since April of 19, because we had our big vacation last year scheduled for the first week of April. And obviously that didn't happen. So I've had a couple of like 1 night, 2 night trips, but that's it. Other than that, I haven't left the house, and it definitely wears on you.
Well, I'm glad you're getting that time away. And one of the things we were talking about, because we all struggle with stuff, and we're very pro mental health at FRSecure and at Security Studio. Because if your mind ain't right, I mean, it's if it's not right, it can be torture for somebody who's suffering through those things. And you're not going to get good work done anyway. So get your mind straight first, always.
Well, and we talk about it, and I personally had an experience last week where company showed it's not just talking the talk, right? It's walking the walk. Tuesday morning, I was trying to work, and all of a sudden just like had like an anxiety attack, which I've never had before. So it was really, really weird for me. Just cold sweat, my palms were sweaty. I had a knot in my stomach. I felt like I was going to throw up, like jittery. It was really, really bizarre, especially I've never, with first time you go through something like that, it is unsettling. So I just messaged Renee and said, hey, I just don't have it. I can't do it today. I'm sorry. No client meetings. There's no client impact. I have to be away. So I went out to the living room thinking, maybe it's being in the office and work. And it was too much just with the kids and the dogs, and I just couldn't handle it. So I ended up going up into our bedroom and closed all the doors and turned off the lights. So it was kind of a blackout situation. And funny enough, so my son loves the cartoon Phineas and Ferb. So we'll have that on. And it's a good, wholesome cartoon. And it has like adult jokes and stuff that the kids don't get. So we have that on a lot. So it's kind of like a calming background. So I put that on the Roku very quietly so you could just barely hear it, and just basically from about 9:30 till 4:30 stayed up there. And, just a lot of like thinking and self-reflection, which you don't do. And it kind of came to the realization that, hey, I recharge by being by myself, right? That windshield time in the car, that transition, I haven't had that for a year and a half. It's basically been 24/7 with somebody here with me. And don't get me wrong, I love my family, but kind of it just hit me. I was like, oh, wow, okay. And you gave me a call to make sure I was okay, and I really appreciated that. Had a couple of kind of issues throughout the week, and kind of realized it was they were being triggered by having a video call. Like I could feel that building throughout the call, and I had to go up and like lay down and turn everything off for an hour or two afterwards to like get things back down to a normal level. So it was, I thought I'd been taking pretty good care of myself mentally, and you are until you realize you're not. So, something I'm going to make a very concerted effort. I was talking with a couple other people and found Megan actually gave me like a relaxation privacy retreat. So you can just go and spend a couple of days, and it's all inclusive, the food and everything. And they have activities where you can just do nothing. So, my wife is very supportive, and I was like, I'm going to do this when I need to do it.
Good for you. Yeah.
Got to do it. I don't want to go through this. I have a whole new level of respect for people that deal with like that anxiety on a daily basis, because it's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think, and it just seems to like it gets worse, because our minds, our bodies weren't built for constant stimulation, like constant, right? It seems like you're getting bombarded all the time. Because I can relate to two things that you said. One is not being able to find place by yourself, right? I'm the same way. I'm an introvert. I'm good with people, but they exhaust me, and I need to have my recharge.
Yeah.
And if I don't get that recharge, I am a mess. And so where I've run into that problem, even here, somewhat, because I came here and I've got no dog to distract me. I've got my 16-year-old daughter isn't here. It's just me and my wife. And then she's having, contractors come in. But even then, it's like, she'll walk in the room and it's like, damn it, I had some alone time. And it's not that I don't love her and I don't want to spend time with her. I do. But I also got to just find a place to get away.
Well, yeah. And even if they don't say anything, like my wife was asking, she's like, hey, can I come in? I'm like, and I was like, no, like, it's not, even if you don't say anything, you're there. It's not you personally, but I truly need isolation at this point.
Right.
And, and it really worked. And it's good to kind of, do that self-reflection and take care of yourself. Cause especially with everything that's been going on the last year and a half, I know I'm not alone. So
no, you're not.
Let's talk about it.
I have anxiety too. It's not an unhealthy amount, I think, of anxiety. I think it's, because there's healthy and unhealthy, right? Unhealthy is when it like paralyzes you, when you have those panic attacks, when you can't manage it. And there's obviously something wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with you, right? I mean, you have to get help for it, because that's why we're all here. I mean, that's why we're on this planet, man. But I do have I have anxiety every time I turn on a video call, because I see myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hide self-view, and that helps. But my daughter, I was telling you, before we started the show, my 16-year-old daughter, it was remote schooling, right? So schooling from home, and she would be up in her room and do classes. And then we got a call from the principal saying, we filed essentially, and there was, I'm shortening this, but essentially the county's being brought in for truancy for my daughter. I'm like, truancy? What the hell? I've talked to her all the time, and she says school's going well, and she says that she's in class every day and all this stuff. Well, it turns out that she was in class every day, but she wouldn't turn on her video. And in class, if you didn't turn on your video, you got marked as absent. And so I talked to her, why don't you turn on your video? And it was complete. I mean, it was sob. She was sobbing. She's like, I can't. It's so much anxiety. And so we had to work through that. And we had to work through that with the school, like, don't mark her as absent when she's actually there, or you see her name in the attendee list. She's got anxiety about this. And combine that with all the crap going on in the world. She used to go to school and see her friends and person every day. And now she doesn't get to do that. She's isolated in her own room, scared as hell about video.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like the school was willing to kind of work with you guys on that, which is good. You wish they would have been a little bit maybe more proactive of talking to you versus like, oh, by the way,
Right.
we've done this, but yeah, it sucks. I won't lie. I couldn't. I don't know I don't know how people do it. It's been exhausting the last week because, like you said, it built on itself. Because now it's like looking at my calendar, or like it starts getting in your head, right? Because then you're like, oh, well, is this going to happen again if I do? What's causing it? So it's you got to talk about it. You can't hold it in. It's not healthy.
Exactly, and I think that's the first step, right? In dealing with anything is to recognize that it's there. Don't go with this denial thing and think, don't go with the stigma. The stigma kills, man. The stigma is such bullshit. It pisses me off because, people don't talk about, suicidal thoughts, or they don't talk about depression, or they don't talk about anxiety because they're afraid of what other people are going to think of them, or, it's taboo. It's like, no, it's not. We all got minds.
Right. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. There's somebody else out there that can relate and understands what you're going through. Like, you're not alone.
Right. I think that's important to remember. So we're security people, and this is a security podcast. And I think it's important for us to remember as security leaders, as CISOs, that the people that we're talking to may be suffering. People on our teams might be suffering. And when you think about, and we've said it so many times, that information security is not about information or security as much as it's about people.
Yep.
People are the ones who suffer. People are the ones who, typically cause a lot of our, security incidents. Well, don't you think you're going to have more incidents when people are suffering, when people aren't thinking clearly, when they're just clicking links, or they're like, yeah, what's the use anyway? I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Well, and everybody, if you looked at, there's advice, watch for changes in employee behavior, blah, blah. I don't think I had any. It just hit me out of the blue. I wasn't even aware, of what was going on until it kind of the dam broke. So, the only thing I can say is be supportive if somebody goes through that. The worst thing you can do is, to say, don't ties it even further. Like, that's only going to make it worse, and you're going to lose loyalty.
100%, man. And the fertile ground, the actual work happens well before somebody suffers or has an episode, right? Because you're right. A lot of times we won't be able to tell in our interaction that you're suffering. But if we have a culture here where we do love each other, we do care about each other, where you feel safe sharing those things, then you will be more likely to say something when you do have an episode, to not, you know what I mean? You'll feel safe.
Yeah. And I felt 100% supported. Like, there was no issues, from sales or marketing or operations, because I had to cancel meetings internally with all those departments, and didn't really tell them why at the time. But I did go back and talk to them after the fact when I was functional again.
Right.
And, they all were like, get it.
Well, I was grateful that Oscar, because I think you and Oscar are very close, and Oscar had mentioned something to me. And sometimes, you're like, well, do I want to call? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to call, because that's part of the BS too, is, well, if I call, they might be offended, or I might make them angry with me, or, no, call. And then if they're angry with you, deal with that later. Because if you're truly going through mental health things, you don't wait.
Well, if you think about it I'm not saying this was me. I was never like suicidal. I never had any of those thoughts. But my thing has always been, you might regret reaching out if they get upset with you, but that'll end. If you don't reach out and they do kill themselves, how do you ever forgive yourself for that? So I'd rather have them pissed and work through, like you said, that, than deal with the, like, I should have done something.
Right. So for the listeners, one of the things that we did, as a company, as a leadership team, was mental health first aid. So if you Google mental health first aid, it was a fantastic course. I think we had a full class, so we had to turn some people away in our own class. But then I think we held another one later for others. But it talks about all these things. It was what, 4 hours, was it?
Yeah, like half a day, something like that.
4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, it was
Totally
really,
worth every
was,
second.
yes, fully agree. And everyone else out there, like I said, I'm really self-aware. I do focus on that stuff, and I've opened up to you about some other, in the past. And man, it just caught me off guard. So, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, it's caught me off guard too, man. And last year when I went to Sturgis, in the middle of the pandemic, and so you had to deal with all the people who were judging on that, regardless of whatever precautions you took, because everybody seems to know whether you're good or bad without even knowing whether you're good or bad. But it was when I came, my wife had been warning me that I just didn't seem right. And then I got back from Sturgis and I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how far I had slipped mentally. I was angry. I was depressed. Yeah. So getting away, I'm excited to hear, after you get back from your long weekend, how things went and how you're feeling.
Yeah. We're going up, heading up north. Found a cabin on 40 acres. The cabin itself is 1.5 miles off the road. So talk about getting away. We're
Good for you.
Getting away.
I love it, man. All right. So the next thing, and you can reach out to me or Brad about these things if you feel comfortable. We can certainly point you in the right resources, because this does apply to us, superhero security people. We have mental health issues just like everybody else does. So get the help you need. The next thing is I want to talk about is, in our industry as security people, we do a lot of telling people what to do, a lot of it. Do this, do that, do this. I mean, that's why we have so many damn standards. So we have so many damn frameworks. So we have so many damn compliance things. Do this, do this, do this. What we don't do a very good job in is how. Great. I know I need an asset inventory. Tell me how.
Mm-hmm.
I know I need to deal with roles and responsibilities. I know I need to get the CEO on board or more involved. Tell me how. And so I figured we'd spend a good part of today's show talking through some of the tips and tricks that have worked for us, and then and some of the things that worked out not so good, maybe.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was shadowing on an assessment for one of the new people, just kind of being there to provide support. And they came up to do you have any sort of centralized asset management? And they're like, no. Like, I don't know. I don't know. What do we have? I don't know. Like computers. And so, I mentioned it, and it's a product I've used, is Spiceworks, right? And so I chimed in. I was like, hey, this is free. Depending on what information you have, there's a cloud-based one, or they used to have a on-prem that did cost a little bit, but nominal amount. And it will centralize your hardware and software assets for you. It'll go out and scan your subnets and tell you, here's what I found, here's what's on it. And they're like, oh, okay, I'll check that out. So, I think not just saying, well, you should have it, but it's that always come with a solution to the problem approach.
Right.
So, being able to not just tell them, hey, you should be doing this, but like you said, here's how, here are some options. Look into these things. It's not as difficult as you think it probably, or you probably think it is.
Right. Yeah. And what people don't realize is oftentimes they'll because you can do it manually too. I think, it depends on how you want to go about, like, what other benefits can I get from doing asset inventories, right? Let's say I want to interns. Let's say maybe I've got interns, or we want to, entertain interns, because interns are a great way to get staff later, right? Because you've already got that introduction to them. So even as something as simple and rudimentary as having an intern, run around to every computer, you know what I mean? And write it down on a spreadsheet.
I mean, that was my first job in IT, was literally going around a college campus and writing down the room and the serial number of the computers in that room.
Yeah. It seems, because we're so advanced that blah. But but that's one thing. And another thing is, you'll find a lot of times people will have tools in their environment already that they can leverage to do asset inventories. If you're doing vulnerability scanning, say with Nessus, for instance, well, all those outputs, right? If you export a .nessus file, it's an XML file, and you can easily parse that XML file, because if you're doing an authenticated scan, I will see every single thing you've got running on that computer.
Yeah. And, funny enough, again, we had an issue with an SS file that it was a scan that their firewall had been set to reply on any IP, which is meant to, I guess, obfuscate, easy for you to say. So they only had like 250, 300 devices, and we didn't catch it because it didn't throw an error, and it came out with like 2,300 devices. And so you can't go back and rescan it, and oh my gosh, clearing that out you just can't do it. So I found a really nice Perl script that parses that Nessus file into a phenomenal spreadsheet with exactly that: host name, software installation, just a wealth of information.
Can you send me that Perl script? Yeah, because I think we should make that available to anybody. If you're struggling with asset inventory and you're doing Nessus scans, here, run this Perl script. It'll put it in a nice format for you. And I think another thing that people run into, because I've heard this as excuses from other security people, because you do just have, there are people who just don't like to work. There's always that, right? I don't want to do asset inventory. Why? And they'll make a bunch of excuses. And then when you get down to the bottom of it, you find out you just don't like to work, do you? You like the paycheck. You like the paycheck, but my God, I didn't know I'd have to actually do stuff.
It's hard work, right? And they want to cherry pick the easy stuff.
Yeah, but one of the, and it's not, sometimes it's not an excuse. It's legitimately, I don't know. Is well, as soon as I do the asset inventory, it's changed.
Yep.
And so, okay, that's fine. You're not going to get it perfect out of the gate. You don't go from having no asset inventory to having a live, updated asset inventory that's always, accurate.
No.
That takes a hell of a long time. Start with doing a basic asset inventory, either manually using something like Spiceworks, using something like Nessus with a Perl script that'll pull it out, whatever you need to get that first asset inventory, right? And if you can get it into a spreadsheet, you can get it into a database, right? That's another step in the maturity. And start quarterly. And then reconcile these inventories, right? So last quarter, it said I had these things. Why do I have 47 new devices on my network when we haven't hired anybody new? We haven't made any purchases,
Yeah.
That's an indicator. Maybe we got something bad happening.
Yep.
And vice versa. What happened to these, 23 years? Is somebody walking out the back door with the systems we don't need, because we wouldn't notice it. But that's the beginning. And you have to do that. And it's frustrating, because I don't know how many people are trying to secure things they don't know they have. It just logically, that just is a fallacy. You cannot protect things unless it's by luck, coincidence, just, you won't be effective at protecting things you don't know you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to me, the next step, or another easy win, is inactive accounts. Right.
Bingo.
So, that's a big risk. Do you have accounts? You're expanding your exposure in your Active Directory that haven't logged in. And, same thing quarterly. I would run a PowerShell script that pulled the name, the OU, because the user was in their departmental OU, and the last login time, and it had to be greater than 90 days. And every quarter started off and would send it, because we had tried to do it with management and never got really any buy-in. So what I did is I sent it to the head of the business unit and said, can you confirm if these accounts are still needed? And, it was like the first time I ran it, there was like, I can remember over 100 accounts because they hadn't followed the process, or HR hadn't followed the process to alert, to, to disable and then delete. And so kind of a happy compromise was, yeah, I would have preferred it if they hadn't logged in 30 days, but that's the business's risk appetite was 90. Okay. And then we disabled it, put it in an OU that stripped all permissions for 6 months and then deleted it. And they were happy with that. And I was at least happy that, we got that taken care of it, but it took probably 3 quarters. And then we got it quit happening. It would be 1 or 2 maybe, because they got tired of being asked why they weren't following the process.
Right. And so, so many times you see people, when you do assessments or you do something, they want remediation immediately, right? So you go from, let's say an easy quantification that we use obviously is the S2 score with Security Studio. Let's say you're 500, you immediately want to go to 660. Okay. If that were possible, it would be cost prohibitive and it wouldn't stick, right? You'd be back here again very soon because it's a maturing process, and no 2 companies mature at the same speed. Oh. And I just got a call on Sunday from one of our large, very good customers, and I think they called me directly because we just have, I guess that kind of relationship. But she called and said, they're under litigation. They had a breach a while back, and opposing counsel is stuck on this thing about them having to disable SSL internally on all systems, and it needs to be done within the next 6 months. Well, this is a very large, complex environment. And so so they wanted my opinion so they can go back to opposing counsel to talk about it. And number one, is this, we could pick anything, right? Why did you pick SSL internal? Right? I mean, I get it. It's a risk, but man, you got a lot more risks that are a lot more impactful than this one. What are you thinking, that there's going to be a man in the middle because somebody compromised something internally? Well, there's your problem. How do they compromise? I mean, whatever. And number two, how can you go in this environment? You'd have to basically drop everything, which means, and it's always give and take, right? If I take my attention off of this thing and put it onto this thing, well, I'm no longer paying attention to that thing. So if I drop everything and say, all right, we're going to disable or eliminate SSL in the entire environment in the next 6 months, it's unreasonable. Why not show progress? Why not go, first, do we have an inventory of all the places SSL is running in this environment? Do we even know what the scope of this is?
Yeah. Well, and, talking about the priority, figuring that out, I'm working on a roadmap, and I was just looking that up. So when I do these roadmaps, I do like a short term. This is your immediate things. Focus on these things first. Yeah. A midterm, like, hey, start planning for these. There's probably going to be software or purchases that are going to be needed. And then long term is like, okay, it's down the road, but just be aware. Keep that in mind as you're moving forward. And so I just drag and drop and then export it to Excel to give them. And I had 67 items in their short term that were 41, total of 41 points. And then their kind of midterm was a 91 items, 6 points. So you're seeing that there's a lot more, but it's maybe not going to gain them as much. And then the long term was 108 for like 37 points. Yeah. But what you'll see is, and I didn't do it on purpose, but short term has the shortest list. It kind of cascades out, which I like to do and not pay attention to, because it's kind of a sanity check for me to say, hey, I put 200 things in there short term. Well, that's not right.
Right.
Right. So what are the most important things?
Yeah. Well, people lose track of that a lot. And then, once you figure out what those are, then how to do them. So we talked about one is asset management, right? Asset inventory. The keys to that are you probably already have tools in your environment to at least get you started, right? To get your first asset inventory and when I'm talking assets, hardware, software, and data. Start with hardware and software, right? Data, we're going to get there. It's a maturity process, but if I don't know, your data is running or controlled by the hardware and software. So if you don't get that stuff figured out first, the data thing's just a bigger mess. So
Yep.
Get those things going. Look for tools in your own environment. We mentioned Spiceworks. We mentioned Nessus. You can do the same thing with Rapid7, same thing with OpenVAS, same thing with lots of different scanners.
Yeah, there's a ton of options. It's just those are the ones personally that I've used, right? So that's what people do.
Exactly.
Work well for you. These.
Right. And don't worry about all the things that happen and the fact that your environment is so damn dynamic and all that other stuff. Do it once, do it again in another month, another quarter. If you have, spare, manpower, you can do it more often. But eventually you build this thing where you will script it and it will be all automatic. And you will get just a report in your inbox that says, hey, these 5 things appeared yesterday that weren't there before.
Yep.
That takes a while.
I mean, and yeah, it takes some skill to put that together. And so there's going to be some trial and error. I mean, I know it didn't work right the first few times that I did it, or I would say it didn't provide the information I was expecting, right? You have to tweak it to get what you want. But yeah, it's free. That's the other thing. It's not like this stuff costs you money. You can script PowerShell to run daily for any new assets, any new user accounts, any new computer accounts, any changes to group membership. Like you can do these things fairly easily. And there are tools out there as well that are inexpensive. I've used several of them. Manage Engine has some fantastic tools, especially for agent management. It's not terribly expensive.
Well, I think, and one of the things we lose out on too, because people like this instant gratification thing, right? So let's go out and buy this cool new tool. It costs us, $100,000 a year to do asset inventory when you could have done it all for free. And I understand it's more work, but there's so much value, so much training value in so much of this work too that you miss out on. Right? When you go through these steps of scripting yourself, when you actually review the asset inventory yourself, when you troubleshoot why certain things are showing up and other things are not showing up, when you go through all these processes, you make yourself so much of a better security person than if you just bought a damn commercial tool, plugged it in, and pushed go.
Well, it's along the same concepts of why we don't write policies for people. We coach them through it. If you do that work and you write this, you're going to be intimately familiar with your environment. You own that environment. You just plug in a tool and let it do its thing. You don't have that same sense of ownership. There's not that same connectivity, I guess, with what's going on.
Well, and that becomes so, people, another thing I think is people are short-sighted because when I have that intimate knowledge of my environment, or at least a more intimate knowledge of my environment, it plays out so much better in detection. I can detect when things are off. I can detect when there's an anomaly in the system. Computers only do what you tell them to do. Why is there more bandwidth today than yesterday? Well, because something is happening. Don't just write it off. So when you know your environment more intimately, you're better at protection, you're better at detection, and you're a lot better at response too. Because I can't tell you how many times we do incident response and they're like, oh, I didn't even know we had that system. What does that system do? I'm like, I don't know. It's your damn environment. Well, how would I know?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. We're like, yeah. We're getting responses from this IP. What's on it? And they're like, I don't know. Maybe you should go find out.
Right? It's your environment. It's like things in your own house, right? Like there's this weird noise coming from the corner, of this bedroom in my house. What is it? I don't know. Well, I guess it's just the way the house is working. No, go open the door and find out what the hell's in there.
Right. You know, and your example of the bandwidth, I personally have gone through that. Our network guys identified a spike in bandwidth, and it turned out one of the help desk staff had taken one of the retired computers and was running a like Pirate Bay torrent on it and downloading stuff, and we were like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
You know, so, but if they hadn't been paying attention, if they didn't know that stuff, how long would that have gone? You know, and I think they caught it within like a week of him putting it on, which really is pretty good.
Right. Well, and part of your postmortem, right? That's why we do postmortems on things is, hey, it took a week. Is a week is adequate, or should we narrow that down? And if you decide, again, you decide. Well, I think a lot of times you look for security people, tell me how quickly should I know, should I become aware of that thing? It depends. I mean, in some cases, if you have a really high security environment where you have a very low risk tolerance and it's not going to get in the way of the business making money, well, maybe it's instantaneous.
Right.
But in other cases, maybe it's a month. One of the things you never want to be, and again, I can't tell you how many incident responses I've been in where I get notified by somebody who's not even part of our organization. It's somebody external, whether it be the Secret Service or the FBI or law enforcement, or God forbid, a customer tell me, hey, I think you've got a breach going on. How freaking embarrassing is that?
Right. Yeah.
It's
no,
like,
you don't want that.
It's like my mother coming into my house and, telling me how to, no, sorry, my house.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you're right. And that's going back to what we were talking about with the CISO's role. What is the organization's risk tolerance? Do you want a daily report? Do you want instantaneous? Do you want weekly? And then, it's been a long time since this happened, but I think they caught it on a weekly report, and because that was what the business was okay with. Like, hey, tell us if anything happened in the past week. Do you see any anomaly?
Well, another thing you just brought up is risk tolerance. We use that all the time. You got to figure out the business's risk tolerance. So let's go there, because we tell people that all the time. And I think, unfortunately, few people actually know how to do that. So I'm going to just go with what I do, and then you can add whatever part you want onto it. Because number one, if I'm ever going to figure out the business's risk tolerance, I have to get the CEO on board with me. I've gotten to the point where if anybody were to come and ask me to be their vCISO, if I'm not reporting to the CEO, I'm not interested. I'm not willing to play a game that I can't win. If you want me to play the game I can win, I will report to the CEO, because that's the person who makes decisions. That's the person who's ultimately responsible for information security in this organization. And I think one of the things we end up doing when you talk about trying to figure out risk tolerance is we don't have these just hard, truthful discussions with other executives. I'm not asking the CEO to be in a weekly meeting with me. I'm not asking the CEO to invest hours and hours and hours and hours with me. What I'm asking the CEO is, this is how we're going to do security. Are you okay with this? Would you like to be communicated in a different way? So ideally, what I want to, and I'm going to come, just like you said, with a suggestion already laid out. I'm not asking them to solve this problem for me, but I'm going to say, I want to give you a quantification of where you're at, where you're going, when you're going to get there, and how much it's going to cost you, all around security, risk management. And then we can delegate from there, right? What's the next layer? Are you going to delegate security risk decisions to me? Not a good answer. Who I want security risk decisions delegated to are heads of business units, the owners of these systems that we're trying to secure together. The good thing is, because a lot of times, oh, that's more work. They don't want to get. Well, here's the really, really cool, awesome advantage is you get autonomy. You get to call the shots, Mr. or Mrs. Head of Business Unit.
Right.
You no longer have to hear from me telling you can or can't do anything. You get to choose what you do.
Right. Yeah. And the one, I fully agree with that. And the one thing I think I've run into the most is them going, okay, so what does that mean? Like, how do we determine what is risk tolerance? And I think the example I've had the best response to is it happened because it was a question of like, hey, how often should we have to change passwords if we have MFA? And my response is, how long are you willing to potentially have a breach if a user clicks something and gives access?
Right.
And they're like, oh.
Right.
Some places it's 90 days like normal. Others, it's like, personally, maybe 6 months.
Right.
It
It goes back to our job, right? As CISO, I consult you on how to make good risk decisions. I give you good risk information for that, and I implement those risk decisions. So your example that you just gave right there, I think was awesome because they asked the question, you consulted on the answer. Now, if you want my opinion, how many, I would say 30 days or 50, whatever. That's my opinion.
And the reality is, to me, and this is going back to the consulting, what's the sensitivity of the data? What are we talking about? Right. So even if it's an admin, I still would 30 days, even with MFA.
Right.
Whatever. Right. If it's somebody that has no physical or no access to sensitive information, maybe it's somebody who's got email only. Well, maybe then you can go longer.
Right. Well, and so when you say risk tolerance, so first it starts with the CEO, right, or the board, or the board. Depending on some organizations, you've got both, right? One holds the other accountable and all that other stuff. So, but it starts there with a number, right? That's why we use the S2 score. All I want you to focus on is this number. This is where it's at. This is where we're planning on making it go. This is how much it's going to cost to make it go there. And this is when we're going to get there. You just give them the 4 pieces of information, right? Now they're involved. And now when I come back the next quarter, and I told you that by the end of this quarter, we were going to be at 600, we're only a 580. Now you can ask me and hold me accountable. Why didn't you get to a 600? And now we can have a different discussion, right? That's the kind of interaction that happens, we want to happen with CEO. The business unit leader, they've got their own quantifications, but now we get more into the details, right? Give them more autonomy. The business unit leader might have their own IT department. They might have a business unit CISO that you work with that takes them to the next levels. You know what I mean? It just all builds on top of itself. That's how you figure out risk tolerance.
Yep. No argument for me.
Right. And so you can use constructs, one of the constructs we use, and you can use others. You can develop your own. I'll tell you how to develop your own. The one that we developed is, we use what's called nested entities. Programmatically, it's a little bit newer, right? So we're exploring this with, for me personally, it's state of Iowa, state of New Jersey, and state of Minnesota. We're all working on how to use nested entities to distribute this risk tolerance throughout the entire state. Yep. Right? But the way it works is really, really simple. Identify what units you have in an organization. Give them their own assessments that are the same as or as close to the same assessments you're using in other places. So you can do apples to apples and do that roll up for the CEO or the governor at the top.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I'm doing the same thing with an international customer. And, we didn't start that way because we didn't have that. That wasn't really fleshed out. So we're migrating to it, but we're going to do, North America, we're going to do Europe, we're going to do Asia, we're going to do South America. Because each of those areas has different expectations, different, support. So let's start at the top. We'll put all these different ones in there and then roll it up. And yeah, exactly.
Well, then it also allows me to dig in deep. So if the CEO, because some CEOs are going to be much more involved than others, right? They have a ton of things on their plate. They're running an entire organization, right? So that's why I wanted to give you 4 things to focus on: where we're at, where we're going, when we're getting there, and how much it's going to cost. That's it. Maybe if there's a little more time, I can tell you what the most significant risk is we're working on right now, or some significant event since the last time we talked. But that's it. And then If they want to know, well, why things are scored, if they ask and want to get more involved, well, now I've got a dashboard where I can roll it out and say, here's your 50 entities that make up our company. This is what their security looks like. And they can say, well, why is that one red? Well, let's go find out. So, you know what I mean? Well, it's red because they made these risk decisions. Okay, either you agree or you don't agree. Ultimately, I do care, but I'm not going to get involved in that.
Right. Yeah. And, it's like you said, hey, they're red because this is their risk tolerance. Well, maybe we have to segment them off because there are other business units that can't accept that level of risk and can't be exposed to it.
Exactly.
So there are consequences for those, but it is what it is.
Yep. Yeah. So in today's podcast, we've already talked about the type of communication that happens with the CEO, how to get, not necessarily how to get the CEO's attention. There isn't one way to get a CEO's attention and buy-in on security. It depends on your relationship. In some cases, you'll have a relationship with the CEO. In some cases, you won't have a relationship with the CEO. I'd be very weary of any place where I didn't have at least a relationship with the CEO. Even if I report to the CIO, which I wouldn't, because I just told you I won't do that work because it's a losing game. I don't want to play it. But if I am reporting to the CIO, that just happens to be the place I'm in, ask for 15 minutes a month. Ask your CIO for a 15-minute a month meeting with the CEO, or maybe you have a relationship with the CEO anyway, even though you report to the CIO. Whatever it takes, get a relationship, a nice working relationship. You'll learn what motivates them, what doesn't motivate them. You'll learn how bought in they are on the mission of the organization. You'll get from them just in these conversations. Yep. And then you can start using their language that'll resonate and be like, hey, remember that thing you talked about? This is how we can help that happen with security. And they'll be like, hell yeah, buy in.
Right. And don't stop there. Do the same thing with business heads.
Yep.
Heads of the different business units. Whoever is making those risk decisions, have a good relationship with them. For InfoSec, quit being the no man. Quit being the no person. Like we've talked about, it's the yes but approach.
Or let's just say I don't know.
True. Yeah, I don't know. Let me find out. Right, but get away from just saying no, because you're never going to build a good relationship.
Well, and it's funny how many times you and I, because I see it happen all the time with security people, that we get asked, well, what's the top thing I should do? What's the number one thing I should do? I don't know. And I don't know because we haven't had that discussion. I don't know your business. I don't know what you do to make money. I don't know what's more important to you, your culture or making money. I don't know if you're a public company or a private company. I don't know if you work in technology or you're a bookstore. I mean, how the hell would I know? Let's have a talk.
Oh my gosh. So many times in the pre-sales process, I get brought in because the customer wants to talk to an expert, not a salesperson, which I totally understand. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, okay, so what would be the first thing you would do or recommend for us? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you have a risk assessment? If not, let's start there. Yeah. Let's figure out what we got. I don't know what to tell you because I have no idea what you're dealing with. Or what I'm dealing with.
And my answer now is, what's the first thing you would do? I'd take you out to lunch. Why would you take me out to lunch? So I get to know you. I can't consult you. I can't tell you what's good for you and what's not good for you unless I have some time to diagnose what your problems are.
Yeah, and that's why we've kind of transitioned how we're doing our vCISO engagements, right? We had been doing it where we go in and do the full assessment, deliver it, and then kind of really start kicking off that process. Well, yeah, but we were, it's not the best way. So now what we've done is we're going to start with the estimator. It's 60, 70 questions, something like that.
Yep.
High level, just, hey, let's get to know each other.
Right.
And I'm going to get to learn the company and understand that. So that's the first experience the customer now has is, hey, this kind of 2.5 hour, 2 hour meet and greet where I'm going to just ask you some questions, get to know how you work, how the company works, and then I can formulate and at least put together some sort of a plan. You know,
Right.
so it's kind of along those same lines because, right, we can't really take people out to lunch at this point, but especially when they're, you know, in different states, but
Right.
it's the same concept.
Right. And when we can take people out to lunch again, or we can, you know, have that opportunity, it's another thing I've been adding, which is kind of humorous, but it's how I work. It's like, what's the first thing you do? Well, take you out to lunch, and you'll know whether I like you or not by whether I pay or not.
There you
You know what I
go.
mean? If I bought your lunch, then I want to do more. I want to date again. But if I didn't buy your lunch, I'm probably not interested in dating anymore. But 'cause that's another thing too. I mean, it's everybody. You know, if you were to compare security to like dating, everybody wants to go from like I just met you to I want to have babies overnight versus like I want to date a little bit. I want to get to know you. I want to do some things. You know what I mean? We might get to a point where we are going to break up because you know maybe the business changed and whatever. But it's a long-term relational. It's not a transactional thing. It's
Yeah.
frustrating,
No.
but anyway, it's also good because hopefully some of our listeners got some good tidbits out of this. And if you want more about this, reach out to us. We don't
Oh,
work like lawyers. You're not going to get a bill.
yeah. That's why we're not allowed to be truly in the sales process. We're only allowed to come in to talk about the methodology.
Yeah. Sometimes people skirt the process because they figured me out. And so, what is it? Next on Sunday, I start a 3-part training series for women's cyber jitsu. It's 3 2-hour sessions, and we're going to hack ourselves.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's new people getting into the industry, helping them transition and learn some of these basics. I know networks, so we're going to start with networks. It's good stuff. All right, so we got a couple of news things that I wanted to talk about quick, and then we can wrap this sucker up and get about our day. One of the things I thought was interesting, so this comes from CNET, and the title is Hacker Returns All $610 Million in Cryptocurrency Stolen in Cyber Attack. Interesting.
Yeah, I saw that and I was just like, I don't know how.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen because I think I don't know if people actually watch us online, or I don't know, we have 800,000 people a month who listen or download, but I don't know how many people actually watch it. But if you do watch it, I'm going to put it on the screen now because I always forget that we do that. We have people watching too. So I'm going to share my whole screen. So if you want to see some security stuff, maybe steal my identity or something, feel free. But I'm on an iPad, so this is how we're going to roll. So this is the article. Hacker returns all $610 million in cryptocurrency stolen in cyber attack. The attacker's name is Mr. White Hat. Never heard of him. Have you?
No, but it's so weird.
It is weird. So this cryptocurrency theft appeared or happened, as you can see, the Poly Network, a decentralized finance platform, sometimes called a DeFi. $610 million or $600 million in cryptocurrency stolen through a code vulnerability. So the attacker finds the vulnerability, steals lots of money, 273 million in Ethereum tokens, 253 million in Binance Smart Chain, and 85 million USDC from the Polygon network. Mr. Whitehat then returned them all. Almost immediately after he stole the money, he started returning the funds piecemeal. Eventually, all the funds were returned. I thought it was kind of, his quote at the end, "My actions, which may be considered weird, are my efforts to contribute to the security of the Poly project in my personal style."
I mean,
Okay.
guess he got his message across, and at the end of the day, there was no, loss for the people, right? The users. So it worked, but yeah, it is weird.
Quitting the show. He says he's quitting the show, or I don't know if it's a he or she. Well, Mr. Whitehead, I'm guessing it's a he then. Yeah, I don't know who this is. I suppose, could go about trying to figure out who this may be, but I think it's interesting, and I don't have enough time to do that anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Would you do the same? I guess I wouldn't have taken the money to begin with, because I can't mess around with that. There's just too many people that rely on me making better decisions than that.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say that I would, because I wouldn't have taken the money to start with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we would have never gone down this path to begin with, but in a way it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know what to think either. I mean, it's definitely illegal, right? You don't break into computer systems and do these things without permission, regardless of whether you put it back, right? The fact that you were there makes it illegal. But it's not really, is it immoral? Maybe. Unethical? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fine line.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And that just happened, but not that long ago, in the last few days.
Yeah, the news broke yesterday, or at least that's the first time I'd seen it.
So the State Department, this is the next news thing. The State Department reportedly hit by a serious cyber attack. This happened a while back and wasn't reported. I don't think anybody really even noticed that it happened. And we don't know anything about it. So it's just, we know that the State Department allegedly was hit by a serious cyber attack. It doesn't seem to have disrupted anything. It doesn't seem as though they necessarily lost anything, but they're also not, there's zero transparency on what actually took place and who's affected. So we do know that the State Department itself, though, in the ABCD ratings that they do every so often, that the last time they were a D, the State Department. So I don't know. I don't think the government's very good at protecting their stuff, because it's too damn complicated. They think they got a big time ego problem. Are you still there, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, sort of.
Not sure what's going on.
I don't know. I'm going to keep talking, and if you chime in, you chime in.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
weird.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I've been having issues with technology issues with the new computer, so yay.
Yay, technology. So did you have anything to say about the State Department attack?
No, just, I mean, not surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that the government is on, the kick that the government is on today, which is, I don't know, maybe we'll have to do another podcast about it, is the JCDC. I had to swallow my vomit a little bit on that one. If you Google JCDC, you'll know sort of what I'm talking about. But it's a partnership, a collaboration between CISA, which is the Department of Homeland Security, and their want to, or actually even the thinking that you can possibly secure everybody is so ludicrous. But that's essentially what they're trying to do. And I don't think that they're trying to do it to actually secure anybody. I think they're doing it to try to get control of things. There's a difference there. But I don't trust the government to secure my stuff, because the government can't secure their own stuff. So
yeah.
Get your house in order. The last one, which I thought was kind of cool, because these deep fake things are going to become more and more common. So this is from PC Mag. Bruce Willis deep fake to star in Russian TV ads.
That's interesting. I saw something that Val Kilmer did it in that documentary because he has voice issues after he had cancer, I guess, and he was okay with it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, deepfake has come so far that it's almost, well, to the naked eye, even a trained eye, you can't tell.
No.
I mean, you have to really break it down almost pixel by pixel to notice. But they've got the ad actually there. I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, pretty soon you'll be your favorite celebrity. Well, if you're into pornography, you'll see them starring in porn films. When they're not, it's not really them. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. It's going to be weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's just once again, society adopts technology way faster than our ability to secure it, and certainly way faster than our ability to use it responsibly. And this is just another example of where this is heading. It's going to get nasty.
Yep. Oh yeah, it can easily be weaponized.
Oh God, and it will be for sure for human beings, for crying out loud. All right, man. Well, that's all I got. You got any shout outs?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to my wife for putting up with me the last week.
Boom. That's got to be a huge shout out. I mean, that's got to be like the biggest shout out of shout outs.
Yeah. And she started her new job today. So that's exciting for her.
You do have a wonderful wife. She's a true gem, man. I mean, she's in the perfect job too, being a nurse, because she's amazing.
Yep.
I just do every time I see her, it's like I always feel welcome.
Yeah. I'm not gonna argue.
Seriously, man. When we had dinner a few weeks ago over at your place, man, you walk in and you're just like, yeah, it's like we're part of the family. It's awesome.
We try.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a shout out to Kevin, believe it or not, Kevin Orth. Which is weird. It almost pains me to do so. But he's been very supportive. He's been a huge help in us getting through all the legal contract stuff in the state of New Jersey for Security Studio, and just had a really good attitude lately.
Oh. I think we lost you, Evan. I don't know if it's me or you. Up there. I can see you. I cannot.
I'm back.
There you go.
Mexico.
Woohoo.
I get better bandwidth. Well, anyway, I was giving a shout out to Kevin North, believe it or not. Crazy. All right. That's it. So we'll see you next week. You'll be back, what, Tuesday-ish?
I'll be back Monday evening.
Okay.
So.
Have the greatest time ever. Make memories. Take your phone, crack it in half. I'll buy you a new one when you get back.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of lock them up, and we've got a bunch of board games and got some movies, because it does look like it's gonna rain. So my son's super excited to watch Spaceballs because he loves Star Wars, and it's one of my favorite movies. So he was cracking up at the trailer. So we're gonna spend some time together off electronics, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, enjoy, man. Enjoy.
I will.